All righty, everybody. Well, we are glad you are here today. We decided to invite the coaches, of course, all the Trust Edge certified coaches. So we welcome you from around the world and around the country. I know we even have a few I see at least one from Kenya in Quebec, around the world and across the country. So we're excited about you. We are excited to welcome some others today. So those of you that have been certified Trust Edge facilitators or even other friends, we're coming in today. And, our idea, Milton joined us as a senior leader on our team at Trust Edge Leadership Institute in February. Has anything happened in the last few months, Milton?
I think that goes without saying. It's a lot that's happened.
A lot that's happened.
It's been a heck of a first half of the year.
Yeah, what a time.
What a time.
So here we are. So first of all, I made a commitment to the coaches, so you know, on the platform, I'm not going to show the platform today. You can reach anytime to work on seeing all of our updates that are happening every day. But one of the places I'll point you to is the new research pieces are in the coaching and training portion under coaching content, and you'll see all those spliced up by education, healthcare, culture, and even global slides. So I made a commitment that you'd see updates every week, so that's the one we're going to highlight today. But in that vein, we're going to pull back to one piece of the research.
Right.
And I'm pulling from the 2020 Outlook. You all have access to it. I'll show it to this piece right here, the Milton's camera really quick. Camera 2, maybe you can see it. If not, all right. This diversity, we found, is very important. 9 out of 10 people almost said diversity is important to high-performing teams.
Right.
And yet, about half of people, about 7 out of 10 people say they want to be in teams with people that are just like them. We're filming from our studio in Minnesota today, and wow, has a lot happened in the last couple weeks right here and around the world.
Yes, it's been so much happening, and just coming off the edge of COVID, and now the really tragic loss of a life again at the hands of some very difficult circumstances, and it's just really has a heaviness around the community, and I so appreciate us having this platform just to be able to talk a little bit about it and share some ideas.
And that's what we're going to do today. So, as we talk a little bit about diversity and trust, a couple of pillars we're talking about today, all 8 pillars, we believe you can solve every organizational leadership issue against these 8 pillars. The 2 that stand out today are compassion and connection.
Absolutely.
So let's start with a question for you.
Yeah.
As my friend.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
That's it's a great question. It's a very important question because it's not just about the emotion one feels. It's about the heaviness that they feel around the whole community that's going through it, because none of us are going through this by ourselves. And my emotions have ranged from anger to hope to back to anger and to hope again. And I think overall today, I'm doing okay because I do see there's a sense of hope of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to make things better in our own way. And I think that's where it starts. It starts with each one of us.
Yep. Well, we talk about this a lot at Trust Edge. We have to do what we can do. So what can we do? We've had calls and we've had police chiefs. One of our clients is an African-American police chief who has mostly white officers. I've talked, we see some of the challenges with friends and on all kinds of perspectives here. I mean, I just talked, I think it was yesterday or the day before, with a lady that runs a business that we work with. Her husband is a white officer that is feeling the weight of this in a powerful way, and that, as you know, you have kids. How
Yes.
are they feeling? How's your 17-year-old son?
Yeah, you know, we all feel the weight differently, and I think it's important to recognize that. It's not to minimize anyone. It is not minimize one person for being an officer and feeling the weight of having compassion for people and having to do a job where it's very difficult for them. And it's another one for me as a father of a emerging teenager, 17 years old last week. And he's, in the eyes of the world, he's considered a man. And how sometimes it robs us of our innocence.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to jump to, we want to get to some things that we can actually do.
Right.
And some tips and some thoughts around that. So I'm going to come back to thinking about advice we might give coaches in diverse environments. And I would argue this. First of all, many of you on the call today are certified coaches with Trust Edge. All of us have the opportunity to be leaders, influences, and coaches in a way. And so I'm going to come back to that question, and I think we should start here. So many of you that are coaches with us have done this before. Grab a white piece of paper, if you can. Wherever you are, grab a white piece of paper and a pen, okay? And if you're willing, go ahead. Duncan from Nairobi, we're thinking about you today. It's good to see you. Sam Wally, New York City. If you can, go ahead and show us yourselves.
Sure,
And we can see all of you, by the way. So if you are willing, Dixie Allen, my dear friend, if you're willing, open up your video so we can see you. And don't worry about what it looks like in the background. If you're willing, I know there are reasons not to. Don't worry if the cat jumps on your screen or if your 4-year-old runs in their jammies or no jammies behind you. Okay? So this is a live call. Hi, Jeanette. Okay, so if you're willing, let's try this and let's see if we can see some more of you. Oh, it's so fun. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, and around the world, David Willman. All right, this is terrific. So we get to see you. So on your piece of paper, we're going to ask 2 questions. Take a white piece of paper and just write, first of all, let's write a word, one big word. Write, how have you felt the last week? In one word, what's one feeling you can think of having in the last week? Go ahead and write that down.
Go ahead and write it down. Write it down. And
Is this camera or not? Okay. Hold it to your chest. Okay.
Yeah. Give everybody a second. All right.
Give us a 3 count.
All right, let's see what we got. So everybody on the count of 3, reveal the one word. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Wow. Perplexed, lament, tired, helpless, overwhelmed, hope. Let's see.
Sad.
Sad.
Janet.
Yeah.
Worried.
Worried.
What's Dixie say right there at the bottom left? Lisa. Drained.
Yeah.
What's Duncan say?
Privileged. I see what Nicole wrote there.
Confused.
Scared. Mm-hmm.
Scared?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. These are true.
And then we got some in the Zoom chat that says anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if you're not showing your camera and you want to type some in the Zoom chat, we'll see that as well. Anxiety, yeah.
Processing.
Disappointed, yeah. We've all processed this a lot differently.
We have.
Yeah.
And I think for those of us, and we speak from our own experiences, and I think one thing Milton and I have talked about is we can do more, and we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility in the privileges that we have to be about building trust. And yet, maybe there are different things we can do. I can speak from my experience. It's not my fault that I'm white. It's not Milton's fault that he's brown.
Nope.
But we have opportunities given whatever sphere of influence we have. Milton was an executive of a big company for 25 years, had certain influence there. Now he has influence through Trust Edge. It's not our fault, but we do have a responsibility, and we do have an opportunity. And so I would say, I don't know, it'd be interesting for us to think about what each other's is, but I feel like when I said heavy, my daughter and wife went down and helped clean up, and my daughter was quite shaken up. We live out on a farm quite a way out of the city, even though Lisa and I have lived in the city. And I put heavy, but I feel like a responsibility that I have is to actually listen and feel the weight of others. Mm-hmm. What about your word? What were you thinking?
Yeah, mine was hope, and it's really predicated on the awareness and some of the conversations I've had with people who don't look like me.
Yeah.
And there was a really strong introspection of what can I do, not necessarily me telling them what they should or shouldn't do, but really feeling the weight of how can I be more in the spaces that I have influence.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. So let's do one more word exercise. Get your paper back out, and then we're going to get into some ideas here. But go ahead and write a word of what you're most afraid of. What are you most afraid of in this time? What are you worried about? Can you try to put that in one word? And we're going to give you a few seconds.
Yeah.
To write that.
And count it down. Hello, Ms. Inkstrom, soon-to-be mother of baby Inkstrom. Good to have you today. I see Paul Lindbergh out there. Great to see you.
This is good on the number one.
All the smiles. Hi, Jill.
Good.
Give you a few more seconds to write that one down, and we'll have the big reveal. And then for those of you just joined us, if you're not showing your camera, feel free to go ahead and drop something in the chat so that we can have something to respond to as well. All right, so we ready? All right, on the count of three, let's hold them high. 1, 2, and 3. Losing freedom, civil unrest, things not changing, one-track thinking, truth, incapable, lack of change, finances, financial. What else we got there? Legacy, collapse, divisiveness, yes.
Duncan, what's Duncan saying from Kenya there? Okay, so, and by the way, we did this ahead of time.
Right.
And we did it without knowing what the other was going to say.
Exactly.
And we both wrote the same thing. Misunderstood.
Misunderstood, yes.
What's your kind of misunderstood? Is it the same as mine? I don't know. What is it?
No, I don't think so. I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
Right.
It's the elephant in the room when you talk to people, and you see it all the time. Black lives matter, and people say, "Well, all lives matter." That is true, but when you think about, something that my wife shared with me today is the parable of the sheep. There's a shepherd that had over 100 sheep, and in that moment, there was one sheep that was away from the flock. And that shepherd left that 99 in order to go find that one. And in a lot of ways, that's how I see us being misunderstood sometimes, because when we say Black Lives Matter, we're saying we're part of the flock. And as being part of the flock, it's important that we're a part of the notion that all lives matter, but when that one life matter, then we believe that all lives matter.
Right, because it's assumed that people in privilege matter. People know they matter, right? We matter. But the assumption, that's because we've seen things and people say, well, yeah, but blue lives matter. Absolutely. And so do black lives, and so do brown lives, and so do white lives. But the unspoken is that in many ways, for 400 years in our country, black lives, in fact, it's only the last 15% that legally black lives have the right to matter the same, right? Separated but equal, and all these things. If you look through the history of our country over 400 years, black lives have not legally mattered as much. So when I think of being misunderstood, there's a lot of people with our platform around the world that have said, you got to speak up, David. You got to speak up. You believe in trust. You talk about building trust. We have a lot of clients that are police forces trying to build trust, and governments trying to build trust, and companies trying to build trust, and they speak up. And then at the same time, I get notes that say, David, you're a white male. You have no right to speak up. You can't speak up. Shut up. And so it's like, well, do you think we have a challenge here of the possibility of are we going to be? Am I going to be misunderstood or not? Yes, and one thing I say often, by the way, and we talked about this, but I say, if you want to be critiqued for a living, if you want that to be your job in life, be a speaker, write a book, or lead anything. We're going to get critiqued if we stand up in any way, some way, right? I've had a lot of people, in fact, a lot of the people have said, you got to speak up, David. What they want me to do is say what they want to say through me, right? One way or another. And so I would push all of you coaches out there to speak up appropriately when and how it builds trust. That's what we want to be about. And so I want to jump to another question here, because I think we're going to try to take this to some things of what can we do. I know with many of you last week, I talked about it a little bit, but I want to ask the question here, for all of us that are coaches or leaders or influencers, what, any advice you would have for us for how we can coach in diverse environments? The world is increasingly diverse. Many project by 2050 in the U.S., if you're in America, white will not be the majority in our lifetime. So that doesn't matter in any case. We are in a global economy. So what can we do?
I go right to the compassion pillar. Compassion talks about people putting faith in trusting those who care about them. And in the same sense, you think about the pillar of compassion. If you try to understand the person, and I'm not necessarily saying put yourself in their shoes, but really just genuinely try to understand who they are and what they're dealing with at that moment, especially when you're coaching in diverse environments. People show up differently. People have different questions. People have different concerns. Similar to everyone on the screen had a different word when we asked those two questions. And just trying to be empathetic to what they're going through at that moment. I'm going to be going through something totally different than you. You have friends who are police. You're going to be going through something totally different than I am. And just being able to be compassionate enough with one another to understand where we are at that very moment could help, especially when you're coaching others.
By the way, so we're clear, this doesn't mean we believe you should agree with everybody.
Nope.
I don't. I love my wife. I think
I'm glad
she's
to hear that.
Amazing. But I do not agree with her all the time. I don't think I agree with myself all the time, right? So, but I love myself. I don't know. So, but I also think there's a key word here under compassion, and that is, if you look back to the original research, a key word that came out of the research was intent. We do not tend to trust people that don't have intent beyond themselves. If you're trying to sell me something and I believe your own intent is for yourself, I'm not going to trust you. So it's the same in a whole lot of other ways. This is why the most trusted person in the world to the most people is mom, because generally she has sacrificial intent. So let's go to a few ideas of how can we build trust in this time? And let's get to a few ideas before before we wrap this up.
Yeah.
For sure. So,
You know, the other thing I think about is another pillar that we always talk about is connection. And it's so important to connect with those outside your sphere of influence or the space that you're in. And again, it gets back to listening. You know, we call it the laws: listening, appreciate, be present or wake up, and then serve selflessly. And getting back to what you said earlier, the intent doesn't always equal the impact, but when you serve selflessly, people have a better response to the person that's talking to them or interacting with them.
yep.
Yeah.
And that wake up pillar, the pillar is compassion, but the wake up
Connection.
idea, right? The wake up idea really is the idea that I see you. You are somebody. You are valued. You are real. And so to pause and see you, I just saw a study and it was staggering how much more in a boardroom white people are looked at and listened to and focused on. And the data is enough to say, okay, something's going on here. We need to start seeing and hearing from everyone. By the way, another study in this environment, just to say the diversity of introverts and extroverts, let's go there. In the last 90 days with the virtual environment that we're in, what we found is introverts are more listened to, their ideas are more valued, and all of a sudden companies are getting twice as many ideas because introverts are willing to share ideas in a virtual environment that they wouldn't share in a boardroom of extroverts. So, you know, it's just worth thinking about this a lot of different ways. Are you seeing everyone? I wrote a few other ideas, and then I want to have a response on something else. You got another one first?
No, I was just going to add on to the connection piece is, you know, the one thing that I think, especially when you're coaching people, and we talk about it and it's part of the theory of coaching, make sure you're finding ways to connect with them outside of what you're paid to do. And I think, again, that way you get to learn something that's valuable to you, especially when you're dealing with other cultures.
Great. Yeah. Well, I'm going to back up to something else you said, and that is when I'm very aware that I still have plenty of bias. Some people would call it unconscious bias. Unfortunately, there's plenty of conscious bias, I think, still happening in the world today. But I think if I think of things that help me, certainly I'm grateful for my parents. I'm grateful for the international view, and travel can change people. That changed Malcolm X significantly. Right. Travel did. I think reading, my wife and I each took a class in college together called Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and some of these other things, and continual reading and studying and learning. But one thing that changed me, I grew up in what was at the time the poorest county in Minnesota. It was very white farming community. Remember, I grew up 8 miles from the nearest town, so a neighbor was miles away, right? But, you know, when we had friends and built friendships, and some things my dad said certainly shaped me positively in this regard, but I also, in college, built deep friendships with people of color. I don't know how we can get through our own racism without a friend that we can start to be open and honest. I don't think Facebook is going to be the forum for learning and growth. Like, you shouldn't do that, or you should do that. I just don't think that changes people. But when I know you care about me and you say, David, that you didn't understand something there. Yeah. Hey, I can start because I know we care about each other.
Yeah, but it first comes with people being able to receive that as well. Yeah. You know, and that comes through a relationship. But, you know, everybody has that one black friend. And I would say if you only have one, you need to expand.
You need more. Yeah.
You need more. But it really comes down to really trying to get to know each other. And sometimes, especially times like these, we may be apprehensive, or you may be apprehensive, like our word, misunderstood.
Yeah.
Same word, two totally different meanings.
Very true. So I wrote this down. I don't know if I saw this before. Sometimes I'm reading so much that I feel like, you know, this could be someone else's idea. But I wrote down, I saw some L's somewhere, but in my mind it's this: listening, learning, and loving. And if I said, if there was only one word that's more important than trust, and I don't think there is, it would be love. And but if I think of how we do that, last week on the coaching call, we talked about a whole lot of ways we can learn. We've recommended some books, the Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, the video series, at least for those of us that are white in the room today. A few ideas. Conversations with a Black Man, I think, has been very valuable for me. I've seen a few of those on YouTube. Cultural competence was significant in the work we're doing around the world. We believe this trust work works anywhere, everywhere, in every environment. But we have to listen and contextualize. And those of you I see that are on in Kenya, we might start with a certain pillar compared to in Germany. So contextualizing and understanding that piece. Why are all the Black kids sitting together in the cafeteria? Might be something valuable for some of us to think about. And I'm still here. Those are a few ideas. We could give you a library of recommendations that we've been looking at and thinking about. Building relationships and continuing to listen and learn. And I would really pause, especially white folks out there. Are you really listening? I'm not always. I haven't always.
It's not easy.
No.
It's not easy. And but it's conversations like this that start. And everyone who's under the sound of our voices will internalize this differently. And I think the most important thing is to act in the way that you see fit, where you're most comfortable, because every marathon begins with one step.
Yep.
And how do you take that first step to move towards a better understanding of not just the community around you, but the world that we live in?
Great. Any key questions? And you can unmute. Yeah. And I know we've got, I don't know how many people, 100 people or something on. So if there's any key questions or thought you'd like us to talk about around trust, can I see what's... What is the holding crucible for the trust we're talking about? I need to help understand that.
Yeah.
Breege, I can see you there. Can you unmute and ask your question live and tell us what part of the world you're in? We'll unmute you. Hey, there we go. Good.
Hello.
I can't hear it. Oh, New Delhi. All right, British from New Delhi. There we go. I've got your mic up now.
My question was really about what is the context of this trust we are talking about? Is it purely diversity linked, or it could be in the society? It's people versus government. What is the context of the trust we are talking about?
So, Breege, thank you, by the way, for being on from New Delhi. Maybe it's our first time getting to interact. And my context, so just a quick for everybody, this goes back to my grad work almost 20 years ago. And the work we do out of the Institute is, the big finding was a lack of trust is the biggest expense you have and the biggest expense I have. And I remember my last time in New Delhi when the Trust Edge was launched there. So it's fun to have you on today. But basically, I believe a lack of trust is the biggest cost we have in every environment. In everything of value is built on trust, from relationships to financial institutions. I believe our research proves that the leading indicator is always trust. So it's never a leadership issue. The reason you follow a leader is trust. It's not a sales issue. The reason you buy from someone is trust. It's not a marketing issue. The only way to amplify a marketing message is increase trust in the message. In fact, here, if we get to diversity today, it's never a diversity issue. The biggest Harvard study would show diversity on its own pits people against each other, unless there's trust. The only way to get the value of diversity is increase trust. The only way to enable learning in a group is increase trust in that group. The only way to increase innovation in a company is increase trust, then people share ideas and get creative. So we, in fact, use this. no arrogance about that we know everything, but I will say we stand on that at the root cause, it is always a trust issue, and there's a way to build it. And Ann will happily send you some things. She's chatting from our office right now and send you some more on Trust Edge and our newest research that shows the 8-pillar framework. In fact, you can throw that in the chat, Ann, of the 8 pillars of trust. And and so you can see a little bit more about what we think, because the 8 pillars, we believe you can use these 8 pillars to solve every organizational and leadership issue in the world, but how you do it, we have no ego about.
Right.
We have to contextualize for your situation in India, or for the situation in Kenya, Duncan down here, for what's happening in Quebec, for what's happening, by the way, also with group. So let's just take it simply. Clarity is one of the pillars. We trust the clear, we mistrust or distrust the ambiguous. But the most important part of clarity for leaders might be clarity of vision. The most important part of clarity for a salesperson might be clarity of the benefits of the product. They're really clear about who cool they are, but they're not clear about the benefits. A teacher might be totally not trusted because they're not clear about the assignment. In every case, clarity was one of the 8 pillars that built trust, but how we apply it, of course, we contextualize. Follow up with that, Breach?
Bit of follow-up, David. My really question came from the fact that globally, I see, governments are losing trust, political parties are losing trust, citizens are losing trust in many of the institutions we considered sacred for many centuries, if I may say that. So this is the context where I think my question was coming from. It's a very large context. And I think some of what you said is relevant, but in case you'd like to add anything else, I really welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So all I would say is you're right. And that's why we exist. Because we think trust is the most important benefit a government can have, a policing unit can have, a business can have. And this is why we exist, because people are losing trust, and so they're losing an advantage. We call it the trust edge, but this advantage that helps influence people toward positive outcomes. And so that is why we exist. And you're right. I've written on it. I've talked about it. Institutional trust has dropped deeply in the last 50 years. We don't trust government as much as we used to. It used to be 64% 40 years ago, or no, almost 80% in the U.S. Now it's 7% trust in government. It used to be people, I don't know what it's like in India, but we used to trust in politics to a certain degree. And the reason we had Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump is because those were the outliers of whoever's the most not political at the time. That's why they were positive here. We used to trust in our school system here in America. Now homeschooling and other types of schooling are way more used than ever before. So there's a lot we can say about that. Thank you. Let's take a couple more questions, or do you have a follow-up to that, Milton?
No, I just any more questions out there? Let's see what we got. Let's see. Can we get practical ideas for handling a heated conversation with someone who doesn't see eye to eye? Example, COVID-19 or George Floyd and wearing masks. For me, and I'll start, David, you can finish. It comes down to, again, listening. Trying to understand more about why that conversation comes up versus what they're saying. And sometimes we can get so enamored in what people are saying that we can't really hear the context of the conversation. So again, listen intently, try not to take offense, and try to show some compassion and really hear where that person is coming from.
What Milton just said takes a ton of work, but it's the way. You have to learn to listen. It's sad to me, half of communication is listening, and almost no one's had any training in it. So you have got to get better at listening, and so do I. So that's some real listening. Not learning some trite way of, remember to nod at people. Remember to ask forced questions. I mean, really listening. And that takes too much work for most people to be willing to do, and yet it probably would be the best training you and I could have. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it does take a lot of work to put yourselves in others' shoes. So, my dad always said the best way to beat kind of racism type things is travel,
Yep.
read, and build friendships with people that don't look like you. And his two best friends from the Army, he's 90 years old, a veteran, two best friends was an American Indian and a black person. And he said, this is, once I had that close a friendship, and I hope he has more than one, by the way, and I have more than one, to be fair. I have
You
way
got
more,
two, now you got me.
That's right. So, and there's one of mine right there, Sam Wally in New York City, and Duncan in Nairobi, and I know there's many that I'm not seeing everybody at once. But let's.
But I think you're right though. It's just a exposure, exposing yourself to other cultures, exposing yourself to other people, listening. And I know, getting outside your comfort zone is difficult. But just think about it. Most rooms I walk into, people don't look like me.
Yeah.
So it's okay to be uncomfortable. Just with the intent of learning, we can all get better together.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I will say this to that last question too. People think I should use social media more. I don't use it much, as most of you know. The team posts what we're doing.
He's got a team.
I mean, I need a lot of help. Everybody knows that. But the thing is, so you see some of what we're doing, but the part of the reason is what we've learned is you don't make much of a difference in shouting out things without context and perspective on social media. But we can lose a whole lot of influence of what we can have from personal relationships on social media. So I'm not saying don't use it. Big movements have happened on social media that are positive. But my experience has been relationship, especially. Are there any other key questions there?
Yeah.
We got a final thing to say, but just want to make sure.
What do your organization? Oh, let's see here. One from Kevin Wright. What do your organization's leadership teams, boards, and friends look like? Science and statistics say we engage with people like ourselves. Our last research said that in the connection pillar, 63% of the people said they would like to be around people that are like them.
Yeah, more than
And
that.
we just have to change what that looks like. It doesn't just mean color.
Yeah.
It means your hobbies, the things you like to do, the things that you're interested in. I think is also important to understand so that you can create a better connection.
By the way, a couple ideas under that for boards, because I'm on the National Association of Corporate Directors, and two things. One, I wish I remembered right now the lady out of Stanford that wrote the book. I was just with her in California. Anyway, the idea that basically people that I need this in the top of my head. People with diverse boards are way more successful for a number of reasons. And I got to follow up a tip with how you get a more diverse board or leadership. But here's what happened. I'll give one example outside of this, that in a boardroom, in one situation, a chairman and the CEO got fiercely upset with each other. In fact, so upset that the CEO threw something across the room. Everybody saw it happen, saw that anger happen. After that point, that was the start of the end for that company because no one was willing to share the negative. It became just yes people, or yes men as we call them, right, around that board. And so everybody that was a little bit diverse in thinking, in this case it might not be color of skin, but any diversity of thought was weeded out and the company tanked. And that's the same with any kind of diversity. If we don't hear from more voices, we lose, and we lose the benefit of it. Now, one of the ways to have the benefits of diversity, this doesn't mean have diversity in every way. If you see how I define diversity in my first book, The Trust Edge, it is a diversity, not just color of skin. It's a whole lot of ways, and we want to embrace some of that, but you can't be diverse in one way. You cannot be diverse in values and mission. Because if you have the same mission, it's like if the war's over there and that's our enemy, and we're both shooting that way, I don't care what you look like. We got the same aim, we got the same mission, we got the same values, and all of a sudden we have something. You do have to have unifying factors to have trust. You have to have a unified vision. You have to have a unified values. But you have to have other diversity and see your company as a body.
Right. Yep.
And you need hands, and you need head, and you need feet, and you're not all the same. The other idea, I'll give you a practical one. When hiring executives, one idea that came out of National Association of Corporate Directors was hire the best person. No doubt about it. You got to hire the best person. But in executive and board roles, when you get it down to the last 3 spots, make sure one of them is a minority. Just so you're not biased against the possibility of a minority being in that final run. This isn't an argument for not hiring the best, but in that final 3, make sure what you're bringing forward is at least one minority.
And the thing I would add to that, though, is also the people that you employ to hire. Mm-hmm. Make sure that group is diverse, because there is inherent bias, or can be an inherent bias. If you have a group of people that look like you hiring for you, then you have the lesser likelihood to find the right candidate.
Right. Any other questions you can read there?
Yeah.
Your eyes are better than mine for that.
What is that? What will be the impact if not much comes out of this moment? You know, boy, that's something that I hope against. You know, I don't ever like to see someone to lose their life in the way that the world has seen. And it really comes down to, again, us in this room being open to having this conversation, to really considering something different outside of our groups of people that we hang around, and to show more compassion, and to listen more, and to be more connected to the world around us instead of shrinking to our suburban communities and staying there.
Yeah. Well, I think the answer, too, is just what's there going to be? There's going to be more death, more injustice, more less opportunity for growth. There's going to be more destruction, and I don't just mean it by destruction that we saw $1 billion in 2 days in Minneapolis. I mean destruction of companies, destruction of ideas, destruction of innovation, and destruction of relationships.
Yeah.
So that's what's going to happen. That's what we have to look forward to if nothing happens.
All right, let's see, a couple more questions. Let's see. Anyone that wants to come on and say something? Let's see who we got. Who's brave?
Give a five more minutes. We want to make sure we're less than an hour here, but anybody that wants to, I'm going to point a couple people out because I can maybe, yes, let's
Obang.
go.
Yeah.
Obang. Say where you're from, please, and clearly and loudly so I can hear you here. Thank you. Or we can.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Thumbs up. There we go.
Can you hear me fine?
Now I can, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, my name is Obang Beto from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia,
Okay.
Welcome.
Welcome.
East Africa. And thank you, Dave. Milton, thank you to both of you. I work with the human rights organization. And thanks to Jill. Jill is my work with me. Jill Anderson and Paul Lindbergh, some of the people there I know.
Hello.
So anyway, my question is about the values. Trust is the key. But value also is, I think, something that seems to be sometimes, especially working in a place in Africa, when you inflict a pain on another human being, you devalue them. And when you devalue them, they mean nothing. So I find that like dealing with the cop, when he put his knee there, has he seen that as a human like him? He would have moved his knees. So the work I do when working in a third world country, especially in Ethiopia, where the ethnicities, it become above everything else, above the law, above the humanity. So it become very difficult because that really makes people not to see the other as you see yourself. So one of the things we're trying to do with this organization we are working with is we try to tell the people that, humanity for any other differences. When we come to this world, we have no education, no language, no culture, no race, nothing. We come as a human beings. by being a human, the second thing, then we have the responsibility, to also that take care of other people. So being a human being carry a responsibility. By being a human being, we owe a debt to God. That we are here not only for ourselves, as being as a human being, God make us. And usually I try to tell the people in third world country where they don't see the humanity, and tell them that by being a human being, you have already a responsibility beyond your ethnicity, leave alone your family. And so in this case, then trust is a key. But before that trust is the key. But how can you link that, the humanity aspect of it? When we talk about this, this is beyond the black and white. It is, something about the humanity thing.
Well,
so in my question is, when we teach the peoples who don't value the others, not because of their white, because they are of different ethnicity, because of different religion, how can we combine that with ethnicity together to making them sure that you, by being a human being, you have a responsibility beyond yourself. Thank you.
Wow.
So, Obang, this is a great question. Are we ready for 3 more hours? This is Obang. So, by the way, next time I come to, I spent 5 times to Kenya in the last couple of years. So next time I got to jump up to Ethiopia and see you. But as you know, in your part of the world, and we deal with this other parts of Africa, and most of my time has been East Africa, but the tribalism is enormously painful, and some of you see it in different ways in caste systems, parts of the world. But in America, we have a caste system too. And so it's not as overt as it is there. And that's what we hope to do something about. So to your question, I don't know how to answer the question well. I will just say that right up, about how we get to see people as human. That is, I think some of the things I said before that build empathy are actually putting your feet in their shoes, by traveling. I've seen people change by traveling, by living somewhere else. I've seen people change by making friends or building relationships. And I have seen people change by reading, and then they somehow get a chance of putting themselves in those stories. Yeah. But that's the quick answer. On the policing side, there are parts of the world, including parts of East Africa, where we've done some significant work talking about police reform issues and dealing with those. And in fact, one of the days in one of the countries, on the same day we did a big police reform initiative, in one of the villages, a police officer was drugged and killed in that village. It is big, weighty, challenging efforts, and in those cases there are 2 big changes that need to happen. There is a human change of people, individuals, and there's also a system change that needs to happen in the way policing is done, specifically in the way in what we're talking about. And I think for the sake of everyone, I won't get on. I have some clear, people have heard them before, my recommendations on systemic policing issues, but that's a long and maybe not so relevant for everybody on this call, but I really appreciate it. Keep carrying the torch in Ethiopia, and thank you for that. One more question maybe we should go with, and we'll wrap it.
Is there another question from the gallery?
Or comment. Or if not, I will point to Sam Wally, start thinking of something, because here you are, an East African, a good friend of mine, and you live in New York City now, and there's been plenty of challenges in just the last few days right outside of where you live for the last 2 weeks. So maybe if I don't see another comment, maybe a comment, just a quick one from you, because you can tie, as well as many of us, 2 parts of the world.
I have a quick comment / question.
Andrea. Please, Andrea.
I'm Andrea in Minneapolis. You're talking about travel, and I know a lot of us can't travel right now because of COVID-19. Do you have tips for how to kind of virtually travel?
Andrea, right here on this little call that we put out an hour ago, did we decide to do this, or 3 hours ago? I think we decided to invite people. These kind of things where you get the discussion going in a safe place where people actually want to build trust.
Right.
People have asked me why I haven't gone to certain things. I'm not against. I think there's a place for protest. I think there's a place for certain things, but I'm made to be a part of where are we really working on moving this forward, and sometimes that's a protest, right?
Absolutely.
But sometimes that's being a place where we can talk and discuss and actually disagree and still like or trust each other.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The other thing I was going to say to Andrea is, one of the things David did earlier was share a number of resources that are available to you, and you can put yourself into a story and really get, transport there through the reading. So I would say maybe pick up a few of those books or one of those books that he talked about, and that can help you to start to internalize some of the things that we've talked about and experience cultures in a different way.
In this time where you're on your own, Andrea, I think being on your own, Kendra, you're next. But on your, reading, watching, there's some great, somebody you can probably put it in the chat, the racial issues. Oh, there's a, boy.
There's so many documentaries.
Yeah, there's so many documentaries. So I think putting ourselves in a different place and watching different stories than we might be inclined to, and not just for some of you, watching James Bond. So go ahead,
Kendra.
I think the word travel can be used very loosely, and I was just thinking about, I live in southern Georgia in a small town for work one time. I would relocated and maybe had 2 red lights, and they literally would say they've never been across town, or they had never, in that southern place, had never been to Atlanta. Just broadening your comfort zone. Some people maybe have never really, been in the city if they're in the northern part. So the word travel, I think, can be used loosely. I think when I started traveling internationally, that made a huge difference for me. But just traveling, period. We've had foreign exchange students that, one that thinks she probably maybe have traveled more than an average American that hit probably 20 states. Yeah.
Great thought. And Kendra, thank you for being on. She would be one of the best resources, I would argue, for holding conversations. If you would like to hold we can have you in touch with her on holding conversations with a diverse population that results in understanding. And we can have you in touch with her if your company would like to do that, because she has helped build trust across a variety of diversities. And so, Kendra, thanks for being on. So I'm going to go, because I said I was going to, and give Sam Wally, at this point, I'm sure he's thought of something brilliant to say, even though I did just ask him 1 minute ago. Thank you. Okay, unmute. There we go.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you, David, and thank you, everyone that's on the call. You caught me by surprise, but I will just make an observation, and then maybe, I don't know whether this would be a question. One of the things that this conversation has made me think about, and just going back to my life, having grown up in Kenya, studied in England, and then come to live here, is that I've lived in both a tribal, an environment where there's tribalism, and also an environment where there's racism. And so it's very interesting to be in a situation where you face certain obstacles because of how you look, which is racism, or obstacles because of what your name says about your ethnic origins. And when I went to England, it's the first time actually I was conscious that I'm Black. I mean, I had never thought about it because I lived in a 99% Black country. So you never think that you're a Black person until you go to another country and suddenly people treat you as a Black. I was in one of the world's best universities, but I still got called the N-word there. Here in New York, it's not been as bad. My personal experience, of course, I've had 2 police stops in the last 2 years that I've been here. So I've been introduced to that world, but the policemen were very polite. One of them was on the New Jersey Turnpike. So I would say that what I've chosen as a person is I fit anywhere and everywhere. I have friends that are Muslim, Chinese, Japanese, white, Arab. I mean, I don't care how you look. All I look for is, do we share the same values and do you want to work together? And
I can attest to that, Sam, that you, go ahead.
I've taught my children that our little house here in New York, we've hosted Koreans for dinner, we've hosted white for dinner, we've hosted Kenyans. We don't care how you look. You're a friend. Come and eat with us. Come and enjoy the meal and fellowship and friendship, and that's it. I mean, that is how we think. So my final question has been that in a moment like this, you need leadership to move forward. And the thing that maybe has made me a bit concerned is, where is that leadership going to come from? Because it's both national and local. And I am not seeing that. I mean, we have a very good governor here, Governor Cuomo, but I'm not seeing him really talk about how New York is going to move to deal with some of these situations. Thank you.
I'll start with the leadership piece because I love leadership, and one of my friends on the call would say leadership is personal. And I always would tell the group that I work with is, regardless of your role, whether you are a sales professional or a territory manager, we're all leaders. And I think that's the first step, is to stop looking outwardly for leadership and look inwardly and consider all of us leaders, because if we're going to make global change, it's not going to happen from the helm of one person. It's going to start with all of us marching in the same manner, in the same way, and leading, like you say, with our beliefs and our value systems.
It's a great movie, and it might be a movie, but the power of one matters. And so we just, this, you've heard me say this before, Sam. I agree with you. I mean, leadership has more influence. It's unfortunate in many cases. So you have bad leadership, you have it magnified. You have good leadership, you get it magnified. But the problem is, we can't do anything except for what we can do.
Yes.
But the problem that I see is people don't do all they can do. And that's what we're trying to do out of the Institute. We have the privilege of walking by many of you, presidents of countries and presidents of companies. And when we can help you as leaders be more trusted by building the 8 pillars of trust, then we help you be more influential in a way that makes a real difference. And so that's all, Sam, I wish we could I want to take that leader off, and I want to take that leader off, and I want to take that one, add that one out with that. We'd have worse problems, and parts of the country, parts of the world that have done that. Take that one out, put that one in. And that doesn't work so well either.
Yeah.
So we have to do what we can do. So thank you all for being a part of our time today.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a commitment for Milton and I. Before I do that, if you are new to Trust Edge Leadership Institute, we, outside of the research, we put out one of the biggest studies on trust and leadership every year, the Trust Outlook. We're happy to give access to that for you. It's a global study. We also, all of our work centers around building trusted leaders and organizations around the world. We work with everything from companies to pro sports teams to global governments to policing to, I'm sure I missed something, education and whatnot. We only have one focus. We only have one expertise. And that is helping people be most trusted and helping organizations be most trusted. So that's what we do. If we can help you, I'm sure Ann will put some information in the notes there. You can call us, you can email, you can write. For those of you that are coaches, thank you for all you do to share this most important message, I think, of being trusted by being trustworthy. And so this is our commitment. Together we made it. We are committed to listening and loving and learning. We're committed to making mistakes together and getting better. And that's what we hope to do and be examples of as far as trust.
And you can't just gloss over that last point. You're going to make mistakes together, but mistakes mean you're trying.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to do as a people, as a human race, as a global race.
I can't say it better.
Thank you, guys.